2, and 1. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the second edition of Nooners and Location and Lore. Today I have a special guest. We'll be doing Highgarden, and a special guest is MackenzieLBurns, aka SaSa. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well this morning. I'm excited to talk about Highgarden with you because it's just going through all of the history. It's just awesome to kind of see this place where one of our favorite families comes from. So
Yeah, you gotta love the Queen of Thorns, plus all of the history and lore that go behind Highgarden, everything from Garth Greenhand to all of his sons that supposedly have founded every house in the Seven Kingdoms. So, with that, we'll get right into this. It's kind of a 3-segment format. Ask you what's your favorite, why it's your favorite. Also, we'll get into the history and the lore. And then we'll get into maybe some conspiracy theories and just random talk at the end. So, why'd you pick Highgarden?
why I picked Highgarden? Well, it's because I kind of know more about House Stark, and we learn a lot from Fire and Blood about King's Landing, so it's like I could pick the Stormlands, but we kind of know more about that because of Fire and Blood as well, but we don't really know too much about the Reach, specifically with Highgarden, because it's underused in the show. So to know more about it is quite awesome. And in the books, we don't actually really ever go specifically to Highgarden. It's always just talked about. So to have more information on it is just awesome. Plus, House Tyrell is I think probably one of the coolest houses in the show because it's pretty much in recent history. The only house that really represents almost a true matriarchy, even though they do have lords that could obviously take over.
Yeah, very true. It's a good reason. Actually, you and John St. Baptiste fought over this location. Of course, Sassy Sansa always wins. Queen of the North and Queen of the Seven Kingdoms at the end of Season 8. Go ahead and go crazy in the live chat. So, you make some good points there. We don't know a lot about recent history, but there's much and more lore that we can go over in basically the founding of Highgarden. And we're not going to get into everything in the Reach because Clarissa Thompson's going to come on and talk Old Town, so we'll get into bits and pieces of everything, but we're going to focus on Highgarden today. And definitely you can't talk about Highgarden without talking about Garth the Greenhand. So, what are your thoughts on him? And we'll get a little bit into his history. He's kind of the Johnny Appleseed of Westeros. Everywhere he goes, the land becomes fertile. Women become pregnant sometimes just by looking at him. Young maidens will have their moon blood if he smiles at them. All of this crazy lore. What can you tell me about it?
Yeah, so Garth the Greenhand is considered to be one of the first men to arrive in Westeros besides the Children of the Forest. He's known for pretty much bringing people to Westeros. And
Some people even say he was the only man in Westeros, that he was the first man to cross the land bridge.
Yeah, for a long time. And he is considered the first king in the Reach. And he has about 12 children that are pretty much notable about developing and curating other noble families within the Reach. And yeah, one of their stewards for a long time was House Tyrell. And as you said, he was known for kind of making not just lands but people fruitful and Yeah, and
With Highgarden too, I think it's very interesting that it is said that he himself planted the three weirwoods that almost look like one, that are supposedly a great spectacle there.
yeah, they're known as the three singers. That's what the the the, the three weirwood trees are known as together because they're so intertwined. It just looks like one massive weirwood tree, just with three
And the
stalks.
singers, if you think about that, that goes back to the children of the forest singing the songs of earth, wind, and water, and fire. Hey, let's throw out a little John St. Baptiste music moment. But yeah, because they do that with the Arm of Dorn, and I'm actually going to make a little video, quickie on the children of the forest and the Arm of Dorn, uh, and how I think they just used it to their advantage. But it is said that Garth Greenhand, in some accounts, even had green skin. Uh, could he have been a child of the forest or a human child of the forest mix?
We could say they're both, but yeah, because it's assumed that he is like of average, I guess, human height because children of the forest are usually smaller, like childlike size. So you can kind of lean one way or the other with that. Um, it seems both ends are plausible, but I feel like it's more than he was just a human and he just exemplified children of the forest like um, behaviors and mannerisms because he is also considered to be just one version of all of the founding not founding fathers, but like the founding, yeah, I guess you could say founding fathers of the other seven kingdoms. He could be the Reach's version of Bran the Builder, um, and like what Land the Clever for uh, the Westerlands and all the
Yeah.
other locations.
Well, even some say that those are his offspring. Some say that the amalgamation of those characters makes up Garth the Greenhand. Like
Mhm.
he is more than one person, which I could see as well. But when you go back to it, some of the darker notes in history that aren't mentioned as much, and this is mentioned in the World of Ice and Fire, is he demanded blood sacrifices. So yeah, there was even one of the descendants, Mern the Third, the Madling, who actually paid a woods witch immense amounts of gold to raise an army of the dead. I believe somehow Garth Greenhand has a serious connection to the others, or yeah, to the others. That would point even more to him being a child of the forest, the Order of the Green Men actually being they have child of the forest blood in their veins, because didn't they come together to fight against the Andals, right? Didn't the children help them? Yeah, so and they helped the children, vice versa.
Yeah, because the first men came and then it was the Andals that invaded. Um, also true in, I guess, Highgarden and the Reach that they observed for a long time the old gods, which is why there was the werewood. But then eventually, over time, with the, I guess, introduction of the Targaryens, they started to follow the light of the Seven, which in Highgarden, the Sept is only challenged in terms of its beauty by the Starry Sept and the Sept of Baelor, which, hey, like if you have what, the third ranked Sept in all seven kingdoms, you're doing pretty well for yourself. Um,
Uh, yeah, the place is rich, rich with beauty, and that can't be said enough. That's one thing about the Reach. It's definitely this subtropical heaven. It's almost like you Napa Valley in California or something of that nature.
yeah, like yeah, like California, and the High Garden itself is considered by many to be the most beautiful castle in all 7 kingdoms. Based off of artist depictions, it kind of looks like what we can kind of infer is like Cinderella's castle almost, with the white stones and the how it's protected and how it kind of looks, with the light colors and such. And even um, with Highgarden, there's a maze that you have to go through to get into Highgarden, which if you compare Highgarden to, say, the Eyrie, both are pretty much impregnable, but obviously the Eyrie thinks that they have the better standing in terms of security by that aspect. But hey, to be comparable in terms of how good your stronghold is based off of the mazes to get into said castle, it's kind of cool. But
Yeah, it's a briar maze. There's even traps and stuff there that would slow any enemy down, especially people that have never been there before. So it's for fun and for defense, which I think is key.
because I think there was in research there was some stories of if people or individuals who've never been to Highgarden try to get and sack Highgarden, that it's harder because they feel like if they follow, say, a servant who's wandering through the mazes, that they will lead them to the correct place to infiltrate Highgarden. But most times, the servant or the people that are in the gardens usually lead them down the wrong path. And it's a white stones, and there's the briar labyrinth, and that there's ivy that grows everywhere, which makes it aesthetically pleasing. All green.
And yeah, I kind of know that you love the Tyrells here, and we can get into a little more of the Gardener Kings if you want as well. But how they the first Tyrell, Alistair Tyrell, was an Andal, basically a wanderer, a knight, so to speak, maybe even a knight, that helped King Gawain the Fifth Gardener. And he is the one who, without actually fighting, I believe, um, made White Harbor, and what was the other?
It was House Manderley. Well, it's a House Manderley that.
Well, yeah, House Manderley, and there was another house that I can't think of at the time. But this is how they became stewards of the gardeners. And, through his sons, which I think it's Gareth is his son, who was more of a bookish person. And this is kind of where they fit in their role here for a little while with the gardeners.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and with House Tyrell, they were obviously stewards to House Gardner, but through alliances and sides during certain important wars and dances, they eventually became the lords of Highgarden and the lords of the Reach. But they did not play any part in the Dance of the Dragons, but House Gardner played a role in the Field of Fire, where all of them perished, which resulted in the fact of, well, we need a new warden of the West, not West, but warden of the Reach, and House Tyrell was considered because they were on the side of the Targaryens. So
Yeah, I mean, it was Harlan Tyrell as well, who is the one who opened the gates to Aegon without any battle. I think it was a very smart move. I don't even know that he was to be raised up, because all of the other houses, the Fossaways, the Oakhearts, definitely the Oakhearts were pissed, the Florence, about them being raised up, because they were a lowly house at the time. But Aegon raised them up, and it ended up being a wise decision. They're very good with money, and they seemingly, they've been stewards their entire reign of the entire reign of their house has been as a steward, so they were capable of doing what Aegon wanted and becoming part of the kingdom instead of actually ruling. You know what I mean? They ruled this section, but it ended up working out for the betterment of everyone at this point. And them not getting involved in the Dance of Dragons was probably the smartest thing they've ever done.
Yeah, but for a second, they were also involved with I forgot, with Garden Greenhand. We forgot to mention that they wore him and the Kings of the Reach wore 2 different crowns depending on what had happened during, or what stage of, I guess, the country the regent was in. If it was times of peace, it was vines and flowers, but if it was times of war, which only happens a few times and for only a short amount of years, they wore bronze thorns, which is kind of a cool thing, even though in the show they depict a lot of the Tyrell crowns as metal, which I guess, hey, so.
Yeah, it wasn't, was it Golden Hand? What was his name? Was it Garth?
Garth Goldenhand reigned for 81 years, and throughout, he became king at the age of 12 years old, and he died at the age of 93. And for only 10 years of his reign, there was war. Imagine that.
Hey, that's a hell of a king. That's better than Jaehaerys, in my opinion, huh?
It's crazy, like, to think that for almost an entire century there was only 10 years of active war. Man.
Another thing that hints at, to me, Garth Greenhand almost being a godlike figure too is sometimes he's not, like, one of his sons drank so much, what was it, cow's milk, or did he eat bull?
Well, there's bull's blood, and
Bull's blood, that's what it was. Drank so much
that
bull's
was
blood, he
Boris
supposedly grew horns.
Yeah, Boris the Breaker was the one who did that.
Yeah, and then you even have Brandon of the Bloody Blade, who made turned the Blue Lake into Red Lake, as you see there. And Red Lake's where the cranes are now. Rose of Red Lake.
Mhm.
That's who was a skin changer. And this is kind of really the only hints we get at skin changing throughout all of this. It makes you wonder if it's real. I kind of believe it's real, but I think it may be more akin to warging. But the legends say they can turn into a crane. And that's one of his children. You want to talk a little bit about his offspring?
Yeah, but just wanted to quickly mention before we talk about the children that Garth Goldenhand, that was considered, with being only having 10 years of active war, that was considered the golden period in the Reach, and that historians, I guess now, like including ourselves, don't know if there was ever going to be a time like that where there is peace, especially considering what happens in the show. With Highgarden, who knows? But yeah, we can talk about the children, or some of the notable children of Garth Greenhand, if you want.
Yeah, sure. Just a few. Like, have John the Oak, who founded the Oak Hearts. Florence the Fox, who I find is pretty funny. She had 3 husbands, and none of them knew of each other. And she ended up basically starting 3 houses. What was it? Florent, Ball, and
Peak.
That's it. And we have, like I said, Brandon of the Bloody Blade, and then we have Foss the Archer, which is basically the forefather, or I can't even think of the term, but he basically founded the green and red apple fossilways.
Maris the Maid, who is renowned for her beauty. She entranced 50 lords during the first tournament that was ever held in Westeros, which is
That's hilarious, and then I think she had three people pretty much vying for her. She married just another person while they were together, and this I just want to like Pretty Maris is Brienne the Beauty, like in the future, kind of. That's how George wrote her, and we have Brienne being called the beauty, but right now in the show, she has a couple of suitors, and one that could be left out is Tormund Giantsbane, which in here, the Grey Giant didn't get to have Maris the maid's hand, and so he just yelled outside the walls until his death. I could see Tormund doing some stuff like that, and I really think that may kind of happen as far as the show goes. And I know that Brienne at some point is going to have someone else interested in her, but
yeah, roaring for bride. Yeah, there's Erilyn Eversweet, the girl who loved honey so much that there was the kings of bees and that she took care of children. She's the first beekeeper and created House Beersby, or
Beesbury, Bursby,
which is kind of cool. But with all of Garth and all of his children, he was obviously responsible for having so many children. But he was also credited by saying that he taught men how to farm and how to kind of cultivate the land and to raise crops and reap for harvest. And you can say that the Reach, as in history and lore, the videos of history and lore, they say that the Reach is what's responsible for what you do at a table, reaching for things and collecting things, because the Reach is kind of responsible for feeding 6 of the 7 kingdoms.
Definitely the breadbasket. That's where they get all the kingdoms get most of their sustenance from the Reach, for sure.
Yeah, from peaches to fire plums to all the nice fruit that imagine being only responsible for feeding so many lives. And because it's also too, it's not only fruitful in terms of produce and livestock, but also with the amount of soldiers and knights that come from, and the military that comes from the Reach and Highgarden.
Yeah, they're able to form the largest army, right?
Yeah, it's the largest army that's in Westeros is part of the Reach, and you can say and it's the heart of chivalry as well, and there's so much involved with Highgarden.
That's kind of where a lot of the tourneys have sprung from. It's kind of the birth of the tourney is at Highgarden, right? And what was that famous tourney we were talking about earlier?
They're called the Tourney of the Field of Roses, which it was held during Jaehaerys's reign, and it's infamous for being the greatest tourney in a generation. So
yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, in the beginning when they held these tourneys as well, the winners would be basically made brought into the Order of the Greenhand, and I think a lot of these knights that fought in these tourneys in the early days were a part of the Order of the Greenhand, which was supposedly destroyed at the Field of Fire. But House Manderley still carries it on, and another house that I can't remember. Please don't destroy me for it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it is. I'm not sure.
They'll tell us in the chat. No biggie. Yeah, to your point about that, when the Tarleys, hold on, Where were we at?
So we were just talking about how it was the tourney of the Field of Roses and how
Okay.
like kind of that whole thing of how it's what the tourneys meant during that period of time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what we really know of knighthood, like you said, kind of comes from here. It was brought over with the Andals, but seemingly you could almost credit it to the Tyrells,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Uh,
The with House Ty. What?
yeah, you could almost say that they may be the first legitimate knights of the realm, at least the ones that helped the first men. Um, yeah, never really thought about that.
Yeah, they help. Well, they are connected to the first men, and also House Tyrell is considered of royal blood, if you want to call it that, in terms of their connection to House Gardner. If you want, we can kind of talk about um, House Tyrell and
Yeah.
how important they are up until recent history in the show, at least.
Oh, no doubt. I'll be talk. Well, the gardeners will be covered much and more. There's so much there. We're trying to keep this podcast around an hour, so we don't destroy your brains. But yeah, we will go right to House Tyrell, and we'll be able to cover more of the Gardner Kings later because the Reach is so vast, and we'll be covering other areas of the Reach later. I think we've touched on a good amount, and yeah, I love it. I love it because we could go down a wormhole forever.
Yeah,
But
because
we'll get to the Tyrell.
yeah, you can say so much about House Gardner, but there's other locations that most definitely are important. So, House Tyrell, their motto is "Growing Strong," which is completely unlike majority of our main houses in Westeros, where it's like the Starks is the North remembers, Lannisters hear me roar, House Baratheon, ours is the Fury. House Tyrell is one of the only remaining, I guess, important houses that doesn't have an animal on their sigil as their sigil, and it's a golden rose. So I like because we were talking about this today. I looked up the symbolism of not only like the rose itself, but the colors and the choices of the color. So green can mean calm, soothing, reassurance, peaceful, health, growth, life, money, um, as well as there's the different types of green, with light green meaning soothing, refreshing, and young, and the gold meaning history, earthiness, richness, tradition, as well as rich, expensive, valuable, and prestigious. Um, but the symbolism, too, of the rose being important is that they're kind of a house that's really close knit, as you can see in the show with Olena and her grandchildren. They protect one another, and when the moment needs to strike, they show their thorns. With especially with Olena and her involvement in Joffrey's death is one section that you can most definitely see. It's like it's when the thorn gets poked out. But yeah, the as well as just a rose being beautiful and kind of a difference between like apples and other things. Like,
Well, yeah, a rose is a beautiful trap. To your point, you can hold a rose, you can smell a rose, you can admire a rose, but be careful, mind it, or you just may prick yourself. And yeah, that's a great point.
as well too, we forgot to mention, but in Highgarden, there are golden roses that grow in Highgarden. So, hey, that may be another key piece or key connection to why House Tyrell uses a golden rose on their sigil as well. The name Growing Strong, they grew from becoming stewards to a major house, and they not necessarily that they were weak before, but now they're strong and fortified until obviously what happens in the show, which may or may not happen in the books. But
well, that's apropos as well because of how the castle is built. It has a little bit of old, kind of crappy square buildings, and now it has this white, flat. I wouldn't call it a marble. I can't remember the exact stone that's used, but just beautiful with air, all the vines, everything growing around it. It's a place that exemplifies life, to your point. And the Tyrells uh, really exemplify. Oh, I'm using that word a couple of times, but it it shows what they are. It kind of really is true. It's that they grow, they sink their roots in, they slowly fill out their plants. They never rush to anything. They just let it bloom and blossom naturally. So it's very poetic and beautiful.
and you can say too that they've also entwined themselves in different houses. Most specifically, the Baratheons was one major house, and the Lannisters as well, that they kind of wrap their vines around as well, with either the history between Mace Tyrell and Robert Baratheon, or Margaery marrying into the Baratheons with Renly, or as well as Margaery also marrying into the Lannister Baratheons with Tommen and Joffrey, and how, yeah, even that whole, the way they stylize how they talk, and how their manipulation techniques is almost like a vine just wrapping itself and slowly just, not necessarily suffocating, but yeah, in a suffocation sense of I'm gonna have more power. As well too, the Tyrells are the second richest family in Westeros compared to the Lannisters.
And it's the women who have these powers, so to speak. You have the Tyrells actually in Fire and Blood, and every dude is a oaf for some reason. Mace, Lord Oaf. I mean, he's good at commanding an army. You see that he's good at speeches. But then if you go back, the apple counter, the Fossaway wife of, I don't know if it was Fossaway, but the wife of the Tyrell that was brought in to become master of coin, he was brought in, but it was for his wife. He was an idiot, but his wife was doing great. Had brought the house back up, and had made them rich again. I think it's pretty hilarious. So that's a great point.
Yeah, the one kind of, not fault you can say, but it's the one problem that the Tyrells kind of faced was with Darien the First Targaryen, who marched onto Dorne with the Tyrells, and Lord Lionel Tyrell, which this is mentioned in the show, dies suspiciously in Dorne because of a bunch of scorpions. So that's like the one, one also measurable, not wise decision, but there's probably a more of a reason behind the killing of Lord Lionel Tyrell, who died in that way. But yeah, the House Tyrell is more or less a matriarchy. We've kind of touched on this. It's
Actually, it was Darren that was killed with the scorpions, and the Tyrells. Let's see, Lionel Tyrell was in charge of Dorne at the time.
Oh, there we go.
That's why it made it such a big thing. Ooh, scandalous.
With the whole Tyrells being named Wardens of the Reach after the Field of Fire meant that they weren't going to rebel, I guess, against the Targaryens. And you can kind of see that with Mace Tyrell, especially with the battle, Robert's Rebellion, and how pretty much Mace Tyrell, you don't wouldn't expect it in the show based off of his show representation, but his army defeated Robert's in the Battle of Ashford.
Yeah, he and Randall Tarley, which is a good kind of thing we'll talk about in a second with the theories. um, won the Battle of Ashford, which wounded Robert, sent him hiding in the towns. They could never find him. I can't remember which town he hid in. And then held up Storm's End until basically Ares had died. So it, their battle prowess is good, and it seems like they picked the perfect women, or the perfect women picked them, right? Every woman that is with them seems to have aspirations, but not to the point to where it corrupts them. Does that make sense?
Like, we see this in the show with Olena and how pretty much she was supposed to marry a Targaryen, Targaryen, but she's like, nah, I'll go and marry Lothar Tyrell instead, which, oh, yeah, like, that would just, like, the fact that she just had the foresight, and it's like, no, I'll choose him over a Targaryen, even though she said it was all the rage to marry a Targaryen when she was a young girl. It's just to know the power of.
Yeah, I think it was Darren the second that she was to wed. Maybe.
Yeah, it just shows the amount of foresight and power that she wanted. Because, hey, yeah.
Alana, the Queen of Thorns, went out perfectly, like she should have, like an OG that she is. And we kind of have an empty house here at Highgarden. And me and you pretty much think that Sam and Gilly may fill that seat. I'll let you expand a little bit, and we'll bounce off each other with that one.
Because we have, well, you can assume that the next known house that could have been the heir or the new wardens of the Reach was House Tarley, but through Dany's actions, she kind of took out the two next wardens of the Reach with Build a Fire 2.0, leaving Sam pretty much the heir to the warden as warden of the Reach. And
well, there's other houses that can be raised up, but he's the only prominent house that we know of, especially in the show, right? And it's funny how history tends to repeat itself, and I think we definitely need to remember that for this ending. If we're going to have the Dance of Dragons again, 2.0, then we can assume one dragon will live, but wounded, kind of like Sunfire did. Sunfire had a wound to his wing and couldn't really ever fly again. Doesn't mean we won't get a clutch of eggs at the end, but yeah.
Yeah, so the fact that House Tarley's kind of prominent member is Sam only kind of just assumes that he may gain Highgarden as a castle. I don't feel Bronn would get such a prominent castle because I don't feel like he's surviving this series. Yeah, it just doesn't seem very possible. And this is because of the sack of Highgarden that we're kind of put in this limbo situation as well, because they didn't really bring up the minor cousins.
I just thought of something, but this is perfect. You have Sam and Gilly. What's Gilly good at?
He's named after the Gilly flower.
Exactly. And she's hunting. She can hunt. I'm sure she can plant things. Summer happens north of the wall. It may still snow, but they can grow things up there or harvest them. So it's pretty fitting. And Sam is in the books, which all the Tyrells, that's kind of how the Tyrells started off, as very bookish people. The son of, whatchamacallit, can't remember his name, but the son of Alistair Tyrell, Gareth, was very bookish, a lot like Sam. So I think this is definitely going to happen. We can almost maybe stamp it, and then we'll see Gilly at the end, like we think, telling the story or singing the song of Ice and Fire. in an old man scenario. And yeah, perhaps Sam wrote the book, perhaps Tyrion wrote the book, perhaps they wrote it together. But at this point in the show, for sure, it kind of looks like Sam's going to be the only one left alive to write the book. Tyrion, it's hard to tell whether he's going to live or die. That's kind of a tough thing there. But with House Tarly, I think they're going to be the ones to rise up here. You had all these other people kneel, but in front of Dany, but it wasn't made obvious that any house was more loyal to her, right? And assuming Sam will be loyal to her after he burnt their parents, that would be like the least thing Dany could do to kind of atone for killing his family, if she lives.
You're kind of relieving Sam of his Night's Watch duties, so he can kind of reign or not become like a warden of the Reach. Like that's the least of she can do to kind of pay for the damage, kind of cause the Reach, because right now no one rules Highgarden. No one really rules the castle that the Tarleys live in. I can't remember it right now. Besides like the Sam's mom, and yeah, it's kind of damaged the whole sort of the Reach, because they need someone who's responsible enough to kind of grow and cultivate this region, or else they're all going to die of starvation.
Yeah, someone has to be in charge of it, and Sam is the obvious choice here. Also, if you go back, and maybe we'll get into some more theories, the Green Man and the Order of the Greenhand, we had the pact signed, and there's a definite connection. I do feel like their closeness with the old gods there, even though they did embrace the faith of the Seven, possibly for political terms. We may never know the exact reason. They still keep the most magnificent godswood in the Seven Kingdoms. And this is a big key, I think, especially, interbreeding wouldn't be like the biggest thing, the craziest thing to ever happen. If you saw, let's say, Garth Greenhand was a group of people that came over, that actually a couple of them got along, or maybe even one, but I would say a couple got along with the children of the forest. Maybe these people were, in a sense, like the Pilgrims, had complete different beliefs than the Andals and didn't really go by their gods. The Pilgrims just had a different belief system, but it seemingly, even if you go by what little evidence we have of the Tyrell Andal coming over, and I mean like the first men interbreeding. I think you have evidence of that as the Crannig men too. They're smaller, they're shorter, lots of them are green seers. I think this happened at Highgarden as well, but seemingly in a different manner. I feel like maybe these people were different stature-wise here, comparative to other ones, because they aren't said to be any smaller, but they're not any bigger than normal people. And I think the line's been diluted. We don't really have any green seers from here, but I think this may have spread off from there. This could be why you have green seers in the north. This could be the tie with Brandon of the Bloody Blade, and that little bit of mixture with the blood is the reason people can green see, because you don't hear of green seers anywhere else other than Westeros. You don't hear about green seers in Essos, or anybody that has green dreams, other than Dany, which seemingly more of a glass candle effect. So there has to be a mixed interbreeding of species here, I think, that's somewhat compatible. I don't know. What do you think? My tinfoil theory of the day. I always got to throw that out there.
No, it's such a likely possibility that not only the Reach is responsible for all of this other growth, but the expansion of the green men or green men and human or first men kind of ideals. Like it's not it's not like no way, that's never possible. It's like this is George and the ability to just the intermixing of natives with Europeans, like that happened. So it's not.
Yeah, because it could have been some of the first men, right? Maybe this small group came over, like I said, not the first men, the first Andals.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have the first men, we have all this happening, and yeah, the Andal invasion. But that doesn't mean a small group of Andals didn't come over there already. That would give you a difference in stature because Andals were tall, blonde haired, big people. So that would put them more in a normal stature range if they actually interbred. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and yeah, we because there's a lot about the Reach, but it's just like the connection between Garth and Greenhand, the children, and how that kind of just muddles down all the way until relative current timeline is just still we need more information um, about it, even though we have a lot of information about the Reach and Highgarden. But yeah, it's just there's also the mythology of just why this specifically is just the most fruitful location. It's just another thing that just makes you go, is it because it's the magic of just Garth the Greenhand? Is it because of something with the children of the forest, or is that just based purely off of location, that that's just the best region?
Well, we know they were pushed out of their land, and this may have been one of the places that the of the forest were most abundant. And if you look at the map here, you could see them being pushed to the God's Eye and even farther north. And that's what happened. They got pushed out when the Andals came. But it would make sense for them to be in the Reach and that be the most fertile location. It's almost akin to the Mayans, right? These little people, they're living by the millions, even though the rainforest is not good for growing shit because there's just a thin layer of topsoil. But I mean, in general, this beautiful place that all these native people, and then there's fucking, of course, white people come and fuck it up as usual.
Yeah, and yeah, the Reach also, not necessarily the Tyrells, but the Reach is kind of what, um, I can't remember which specific king it was, but because he had two daughters, and the Westerlands being like the what we know is now the Lannister, Lannisport region, as well as the Stormlands, they were about to go to war, but because of the Reach and because of strategy, one of the kings said that his two daughters would marry heirs of said regions and just pretty much brought them together to stop
And
fighting.
what does Sam do besides sneak around and do all these political moves when he says he doesn't know anything? But this man is very political. I could see Sam doing stuff like that. So we're drawing more and more uh, comparisons here that, definitely, if unless everything's destroyed, which I don't even see Highgarden getting touched in this madness right now. Sam's getting there. Whether he'll be a warden of what is it, the East? Can't
It's the
remember.
Reach.
Warden of the Reach. Sorry, and or not. Because they may change everything. Someone's still going to have to be in charge there. And who's John going to trust more? Who would John tell Danny he could trust more?
Mm-hmm.
Sam. So
Yeah,
it's a good
like
point.
that's exemplified in season 7, episode 2, when John receives the raven from Sam saying that Dragonstone is the most fruitful location for dragonglass. It's like this message was from my brother Samuel Tarlet, the person I trust more than anybody in this world. Like, he trusts Sam more than anybody, including Sansa or Bran or Arya. Like, this is like that relationship, that established relationship over the last 6 years, technically, if you want to say. It will be key to not only if Jon becomes king and he needs his advisor, which the Tyrells, we're going back to the Tyrells for a second, but the Tyrells were close advisors to the kings, and they're that close connection. So Sam, even though he's a Tyrell, he has this really close connection to Jon. So, and that's important. And yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll see it happen. If it doesn't happen, we're still right. This has been so fun. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I want you, you got any final thoughts or just anything you want to talk about real quick before we get out of here?
Yeah, I can kind of just quickly mention that with the clips that we are using on the lovely picture package, that Olena has important conversations with all three of the remaining, not necessarily like important, but the three queens that were kind of vying for, and telling them important things about each of them that makes them kind of alters them in a sense. Like, talks to Cersei and it's like, what are you going to do? Kill every single person that hates you? Well, she does that. Tells Dany that she's listened to many men in her life and that to not listen to any of them. What does Dany do? And also to, you're a dragon, be a dragon. What does she do? Pretty much the very next episode, becomes the dragon and bees the dragon.
Oh my God, they lost the best possible advisor ever in the entire world. Rest in peace, Olena Tyrell. Oh my gosh, big heart googly eyes for you, my lady. Oh my gosh, man. Like, if you do not love that woman, something's wrong with you. Great points. Oh my gosh, that was fantastic.
And as well with like Sansa, even though it's only the beginning kind of with Sansa becoming into her own, she, for all sakes, tells her what she needs to know, because Olena is like a grandmother figure to her, because she also has Margaery as well, and Margaery is also very influential in Sansa becoming who she is and how she kind of operates. It's kind of crazy to think that these two women from a women-dominated house really kind of impact the remaining three queens, essentially, of the Seven Kingdoms, in a sense, that are remaining still.
Yeah, and we may see another woman-dominated house when Sam and Gilly get married. That's the marriage we see in season 8. The only one, Sam and Gilly. I'll call that now, just to be bold statement. And yeah, Sam wouldn't let Gilly's learning so fast as well, and she already knows so much that I could see Sam definitely listening to her advice above anyone else. Other than mayhaps Jon. But oh my gosh, that's good. I've had such a fun time today, SaSa. Where can people find you at? Go ahead and plug that Three Queens stream as well. And let everybody know where they can find the great and amazing MackenzieLBurns, aka SaSa.
Well, you can find me on my channel, where because we're recording this the day before, we'll be talking season 5, episode 4, Sons of the Harpy, for Wednesday, aka tonight. But next week we should be talking about, if timing works out, we should be talking about season 6, episode 2, Home, which is one of my favorite episodes. And I'm also on Johnny's channel frequently. I'm also on Cylon John's every week. And yeah, we're getting through the rest of the Game of Thrones episodes. Most of them will be double stacked because it's much easier to do it that way. I did put out last night season 5 episodes 2 and 3, The House of Black and White and High Sparrow. Go check it out if you're not. It's 2 full episodes, just over 2 hours, so we did very well that time. And yeah, the 3 queens versus 3 queens theory, it's been in the works pretty much since September of last year is when I really started to delve into it, and then due to circumstances kind of left it to the side, but now I'm really into it. It's our 3 queens, Sansa, Cersei, and Daenerys, and comparing them to Mary Tudor, Mary Queen of Scots, and Elizabeth Tudor. So yeah, there's that. And pretty much also whatever you're doing, I'm either involved in behind the scenes or like this. So
Thanks so much for coming on, SaSa. It has been my pleasure. And everyone out there, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe, please. And I'm #2sexy. You can find me here. We'll be having Fire and Blood coming up. Check out for every Sunday for a new quickie of Ice and Fire. The playlist will be linked below. Be sure to tune in for the next installment of Nooners and Locations and Lore. I don't know what it'll be yet, but we have Old Town, we have Winterfell, we have Iron Islands, and a few more already set up with some good friends. Everyone from AU Pack Mule, John St. Baptiste, Clarissa Thompson, even some more that I have written down that I can't see right now. So be sure to stay tuned. If you like this, the video packages are going to get even better. The first one I did with The Knight Who Smokes the Laughing Tree, check that out. It's hard home. I apologize for some reason. The audio is only in the left speaker. I will upload it at some point a little closer to the season. I've got everything fixed as far as that goes. So if you can't really hear it, don't worry, it'll come back. It's a brilliant podcast. Check that out. Definitely check out the Cylon Johns every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, and every week a podcast is dropped. We have first-time watchers on Fridays, and, well, it's just fun, spoiler-free, and we get to see their reactions because me and John have already seen it, and during the week we do our expert podcast. But be sure to check me out here. Be sure to go ahead, set your reminders for Nooners of Thrones starting April 15th, the day after the season opener of Game of Thrones Season 8, 2 p.m. Eastern. Do not wait. Go ahead and set your reminder. There's already the first thumbnail is already up. Also on Mackenzie's channel, Episode Club of the same Wednesday nights at 8 or 8:30 Eastern. And same deal. Go check that out. With that, thank you so much. And Peter Baelish says goodbye. But I do love Sansa. Peace.
bye everyone.